It is Friday, May 20th. Let's talk PlayStation. Once again, a quiet news week for PlayStation. Still a couple of things going on. So one notable thing that happened this past week is Sony had a Gran Turismo live stream showing off a number of things about the game. One notable thing being that we now know the game's release date. So the game is coming out November 18th in the UK and November 15th in Japan and North America. Some other notable details that we have is 4 sets of different type of vehicles are going to be in the game. 137 premium to premium looking cars to luxury to fantasy looking cars, basically. 19 tracks, 27 different layouts, tons of new info. Obviously, I'll link you to it in the bottom below. And of course, we also know with Gran Turismo Sport, it will have PlayStation VR support. So now we have a firm date. If it's going to be like legit firm, that's to be seen at this point. We all know a lot of times with Gran Turismo specifically, delays happen. So we'll see if it actually holds true to that. So let's talk a little bit about some Uncharted 4. The game has been out, of course. I'm sure a lot of people are enjoying it at this point. But here's a little interesting thing we could talk about. So Nolan North, of course, the voice actor for Nathan Drake, was talking to Vulture.com, and he basically said that if Sony were to do an Uncharted 5, he would absolutely come back to do it. That's not necessarily surprising, especially Nolan North, of course. He's such a stand-up guy. He's very proud of the work he does, and he keeps coming back for it. He loves Uncharted. Really no surprise that he'd come back for a 5th game, but it always poses the question of, will there be a 5th game? Because, of course, Naughty Dog has said time and time and again, and if you finish the game, you know that it is pretty much a good send-off for the series right now. Naughty Dog is pretty much saying, this is our last Uncharted. But Nolan made a good point where it was like, he basically said, depending on how much money this game makes, Sony might want to do another one with another studio, and I would certainly come back. Kind of implying, like, hey, business is business, and if the game does really well, Sony will probably at some point want another one, and they wouldn't necessarily make Naughty Dog do it. They could just give it to another studio, which is absolutely the case. Sony is the IP holder for Uncharted, so they don't necessarily just need Naughty Dog to do it. They can have any studio do it if they want it to. And so a lot of people are kind of looking at this and thinking, maybe that'll happen, or this will absolutely happen, because of course Uncharted 4 is doing incredibly well for Sony right now. The game, we don't really have any sales figures, firm sales figures, but you have to figure the game's selling very well. Of course, publicly it's doing very well. It's been received very well. Why wouldn't Sony, a multi-billion-dollar company that wants to make money, why wouldn't they pursue interest of an Uncharted 5 or another Uncharted game with another studio? And naturally, it's easy to think that. I guess the one question I'd like to probe to people, because this is how I'm seeing it, and it certainly is showing in Sony's track record with how they handle game development and how they work with their developers and even their own IP, which is that, again, this is assuming you've played Uncharted 4. No spoilers, of course, but Uncharted 4 just is a very polished, good video game. You know what I'm saying? And Naughty Dog, of course, is such a revered developer. So when you kind of think about the idea of Sony saying, okay, let's do an Uncharted 5, but let's give it to another developer, and that seems almost foreign of an idea, because could you really top Uncharted 4? That's sort of like a legitimate question here. Would it even be in your best interest to do an Uncharted 5 knowing that there's just no fucking chance another studio is going to be able to top what Naughty Dog did in Uncharted 4? And it's, kind of hard to say that, but would most people disagree? I don't think so. If you've actually played the game or at least seen it in person, or and this is borderline objectively speaking. The game is so polished. Keep in mind that's what I'm kind of referring to, just the top tier quality of the game. If you don't enjoy it yourself, then that's by all means, but objectively looking at how good the game looks, and just how, again, polished it is, how well finished it is, would it even make sense to do an Uncharted 5? Because what studio would you give it to at that point? What studio could properly do a full-on sequel and really knock it out of the park? I can't think of many developers that could probably be able to do that, which is also speaking to the quality of Naughty Dog themselves. They've just been, it seems like every last few releases they've had, it's just they're knocking it out of the park time and time again. And it's making me a little more excited for Naughty Dog's next project, which we don't really know what's going on just yet. Of course, speculation is Last of Us 2 or a completely new IP, which, we know that Naughty Dog is definitely toying with new IP. They were working on a science fiction game at one point, which never materialized, but maybe they might want to revisit that. People always like to toy around with the idea of possibly them doing Jak and Daxter. We all know I would love that, but I don't think that's going to be the case anytime soon. And also Crash Bandicoot, which we talk about time and time again, but that there's nothing's ever coming of that, even though Sony's teasing it left and right. But yeah, that just kind of made me wonder, like, would it even make sense to do Uncharted 5? Like, if Naughty Dog is going to do it, would it even make sense? And people would be like, yeah, because it's going to make money or something. It's like, I don't even think I would, if I was in Sony's position, I wouldn't even bother doing it, because it's just going to almost taint the name of that brand and how well it did, and certainly the send-off that the fourth game had. And kind of going back to what I was saying, especially with Sony and how they handle developers and their IP, Sony typically is the kind of developer or the kind of publisher where they support smaller ideas, they support out there sort of ideas, and when they work closely with some of their developers, they give them a lot of freedom. They let them do what they want. They don't force them to do anything necessarily. They give them the time, the money, the resources, and they allow these decisions to be made in a more, proper, for lack of a better word. I mean, more of coming from a more moral standpoint, and not necessarily a business standpoint. Of course, it is business, but they kind of respect these ideas. They kind of respect, send-offs and things. So I just feel like it would be one of those situations where Uncharted 5 would not make a whole lot of sense, especially if it was to be given to another studio. And for our last little news story, not really much of a big news story, but E3. So Sony has officially announced their E3 press conference, so we've got some firm dates and times. You can expect their conference June 13th, 6 p.m. PT or 9 p.m. ET, or that would be Tuesday, June 14th at 2 a.m. BST, 11 a.m. AEST, or AEST. So as always, like I mentioned every year, every time Sony does have their press conference, I watch the event, I live tweet it, so you can follow me on Twitter, and right as the event's basically over, I film not only a recap of the entire event in case, say, some of you missed it, but also, of course, my initial impressions, which go up about, approximately 3, 4, 5 hours after their conference is over, which, of course, gives me time to actually film the video and edit it and everything. So yeah, it's coming up quick. E3 comes up pretty quickly, it seems like, every single year. And also, obviously, it's E3, so there's going to be a bunch of major developers and publishers out there. A lot of news will come out of it. It's always a big sort of thing. We'll talk more about it once we get closer to it. But yes, mark that on your calendar. Make sure you're free that day, because it's going to be exciting. And I'm genuinely excited because I would assume we're going to be expecting heavy PlayStation VR announcements, because that's getting really close at that point to the actual release of PlayStation VR. Hopefully we'll see more footage of Sony's games like Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, and possibly, Sony Bend will probably finally show us their game. I mean, we've got to see that at some point. I would like to say Quantic Dream, but they definitely would save that for Paris Games Week. So, but yeah, it's probably going to be a big show this year, or at least I hope it will. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. Ryan on Gaming topic was about PlayStation 4 and Xbox One consumer disappointment. Somebody asked me, hey, I feel kind of disappointed with the current releases and exclusives on PlayStation 4. How do you feel? All that stuff. So check that conversation out. That's a really good video. As always, keep submitting topics for Ryan on Gaming. In terms of an update for the Uncharted 4 review, I'm still working on it. I told you guys last week it'll take me a little bit, so just keep your eyes peeled for that. At some point, it'll probably just replace Orion on Gaming for a certain week. That probably would definitely not have it ready by next week, so maybe the week after, but definitely still coming. And that's about it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday.